You can hear me, see me good. I apologize for coming on late. I couldn't connect to the meeting right away. So want to just make sure we do have quorum. Looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 board members. So we do have quorum for today. So let me call the special Board of Education meeting dated 5/19/2025 to order. This is a virtual meeting only. We'll call it to order at 5:33 p.m. Don't have the agenda right in front of me, but next on the agenda would be for our Pledge of Allegiance. So if you're able, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. I wish I had this open in front of me. Our agenda for today, just the title of it. Let me see if I can find it for a second. All right, so our agenda item for today is for the, oh boy, that doesn't work either. Discussion to take action on the 25-26 budget. And the reason for that is that we had a Board of Finance meeting that was held last week. Jeff and I attended that meeting in person, and it was as a result of the failed budget referendum that had taken place. So the discussion was regarding that failed referendum, reasoning behind it, and what the Board of Finance wanted to do as a reaction to that, as well as to some communications that were received from the town, both mainly through emails that they received. Quick synopsis of the meeting was there was an immediate motion to restore the $66,000 to the Board of Ed as well as the $34,000 to the town. There was a lot of discussion that had taken place after that. One of the our Board of Finance members summarized the letters that were received from different townspeople, some for and some against the increase to the taxes. Most and the majority were in favor, and notices to the Board of Finance that they did vote no because of the cuts to education. There was some inconsistencies in the numbers that were laid out in the meeting from one of the Board of Finance members, and the chairperson had a different tally of the letters for and against, but still had the majority being a vote down of the budget because of the cuts to education. So that went on to discussion regarding, I'm sorry, so I should step back. So the motion that was put on the floor to restore the whole $100,000, 66 and 34, was voted down by the Board of Finance with discussion that they did not want to increase taxes to the town. That led into some additional discussion, and again, I'm summarizing, trying to keep this as brief as possible, regarding the non-lapsing account that we have as the Board of Education, as well as the town surplus that the town holds. Again, both of them being contingencies, both being items that are allowable by state statute. The request was for Superintendent Sousa and myself to come back to the Board of Education with our support of taking another $66,000 out of our non-lapsing account. They had questioned on several occasions whether or not, Jeff and I would come back to this board and support it. Our response was that we can't speak for the board. I personally, as the board chair, said that again, I am not in favor of reducing our statutory contingency. It would actually amount to a net of around $100,000 left in our non-lapsing account, which is our contingency, which is only 1% of our total budget. That was after we take away 66, but as well as take away our current projected overrun for the current school year. Is that accurate, Jeff? I think it was net $100,000, correct?
Yes.
So again, I wasn't 100% a proponent of it. I did voice that. I said, again, it would be hard for me to support it. Again, only having 1% left. There was discussion over the Board of Finance having the authority over that non-lapsing account. Superintendent Sousa corrected them, again, regarding the state statute that allows the Board of Educations to hold up to 2% of their surplus on any given year to hold for unknown or unforeseen items. Case in point, this year's current projected overrun. Again, should we not have had this non-lapsing account, it would require us to go to the Board of Finance to get approval instead of having our own contingency to be able to fund that. The Board of Finance as well on the town surplus side. Another reason, again, that we talked about not supporting that is there are advisements and averages for town surplus that we as a town are above and beyond. So we have more town surplus than what would be advised or what the averages are. So at the end of the day, the Board of Finance, through all these discussions, there was a motion. I should step back again. There was another idea asking us to split it 33-33 to be able to fund the $66,000 that was eliminated or cut from our budget. But ultimately, at the end of the day, they did motion and approve that they would take the $66,000 out of the town surplus, and it would fund the Board of Education. Originally, I should say, our second adoption of our budget. So that's why we're here. So the Board of Finance took action. Now we have to take action because our current adopted budget does not align with what the current approval is from the Board of Finance. So we have to do two things. We have to, one, rescind our adopted budget, and then put forward a new budget for the town referendum. That again, I don't think the date has been set yet on when that referendum will be. Any questions? A lot of information in a very short amount of time, but any questions on what I just tried to describe in a quick summary?
Tim, I have a question.
Yes.
Before we approve that, are we going to see the new budget for the Board of Ed?
Yes, the new budget was sent out by Superintendent Sousa, so you should have that in your inbox. He also will pull up on the screen here prior to us voting a summary and a chronology of our current or the budget from the beginning of the proposed budget by the superintendent to where we stand today. So we'll pull that up and we'll share that document as well.
Okay, thank you.
Tim, just in looking at a lot of the Facebook groups regarding this vote, like people were completely confused about the vote, like truly completely confused about the vote. All you have to do is go look at the comments and all of the different pages, and they were completely confused about what they voted for. I think that the vote on the referendum was very confusing. Obviously, we understood it, but people in town did not understand what they were voting for.
I would agree. I've heard the same thing. Again, I'm not social media, so I don't look at those comments, but I have heard the same thing verbally from several different people. We're hopeful that the spreadsheet that we'll pull up in a moment helps explain the track record of the Board of Education budget from, as I said just a few minutes ago, from when Superintendent Sousa originally proposed his first budget to us, and each of the actions that were taken from then until the action that we're about to take tonight. So hopefully that clarifies it. We've also were requested in one of the public comment at the Board of Finance meeting to have an explanatory sheet similar to this that would be available for those coming in to vote. There was also discussion, and I don't know where it's going to land next. I think there's a Board of Selectmen meeting potentially tomorrow night, but there's discussion about should there be a question on the referendum that gives some indication as to why they voted yes or no to the budget. So that again is to be determined, because again, those questions are customary in other towns. They do those so that there's some feedback. Without what we had done was, I know there were some Facebook posts in social media that was soliciting people to respond to at least let the Board of Finance know at the end of the day why they voted no to the budget. But I get it, Deirdre, and we're going to do our best to try to explain our side of it. I can't do that for the town side.
What it boils down to, if I understand, is we essentially can go back to the original budget that we proposed.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I mean, that's exactly what happened. So at the end of the day, you know, and we'll show it on the spreadsheet, when the Board of Education had the discovery or the development with this bus contract, the retirement of an executive assistant, as well as the meeting where we motioned and it was approved for the use of the non-lapsing, we are right back to that. So we are using $66,000 of our non-lapsing to support the two positions that the community input and feedback provided that we should keep in the 25-26 school year. So we're right back to there.
And on the town end, they essentially will be putting out to vote ultimately the same amount, correct?
Yes, at the end of the day, the net result to the town is zero because it came out of the contingency or the town surplus. So the net result is zero, but the town will be voting on a slightly different percentage increase. The percentage increase we voted on at the last referendum was 4.55, if I recall correctly. That 4.55 was it not? Penny, I see you're shaking your head. What was the number?
I think it's 3.55.
3.5. Okay, 3.55. I thank you for correcting me. 3.55. And the number, as I understand today, is going to go back at 3.67.
No, I know. I think it's 3.57. I could be wrong.
Yeah, 3.55. It's going up 0.02. So 3.55 to 3.57. Thank you, Penny.
You're welcome.
So it will go back at 3.57. The reason for that 0.02 increase is there was a clerical error or a mistake in reflecting the Board of Ed's grants. The number we had in our budget did not match the number that the Board of Finance overarching spreadsheet for our town budget had included. So they had to make a small clerical correction. And that clerical correction is increasing the percentage by 0.02 in the next referendum. But again, there wasn't anything on the Board of Ed side. Our numbers were accurate. Our numbers were correct. It was just, again, a call it a fat finger when they put it into the other budget.
It was off by $6,000.
Yep.
It does seem if you have an advisory on a vote, you really only would need an advisory on the no vote.
Yeah.
Ultimately, not the yes vote.
Yeah, I know there's going to be further discussion. Again, I don't have any say into where it goes only as a town member. And again, if that's something the town would want to have, which I don't think there's any reason not to have it, that can be put on there as an advisory so that they have immediate feedback as to why a budget was either approved or not approved.
And I have one more question, then I'll shut up. Was there enough letters to cover the, I think, what was it, 12 votes?
14 votes.
How many letters did they receive?
There were around, Jeff, you might remember the numbers better than me, or Penny actually, because you probably filed them, but I think there were around 50 in total.
Oh.
No, I thought it was 23.
23 in total?
Of the last bunch that came through, yes.
Okay.
That are going with this set of minutes from last Tuesday's meeting.
So there were not very many. And again, as I had said earlier, and I did go through a lot, there was one Board of Finance member who had a different take on the letters, whether they were in support of education or they were in support of not increasing taxes, were the two sets of letters. But in either case, the inconsistency between the chair and that board member, still both were majority for the Board of Education. I should note that, again, as we talk about this, and it's a net zero impact to the town by taking that 66 from the town surplus. The Board of Finance did not reinstate the $34,000 cut to the town side. And I believe that, as my memory serves me, the only discussion on that was on the original vote, or I'm sorry, on the original motion that was to restore the full 100,000 and increase taxes. So there wasn't a lot more discussion on that 34. Any other questions, or do we want to look at the sheet and just kind of walk through the sheet so we can see where it is?
So let me just say this, of the 23 letters that were received, the chair said that 13 were in favor and 10 were against. As where the other Board of Finance member, I never did hear him say how many letters he disputed with the chair's number. So I
Yeah,
don't
he
know.
read off his tally, Penny. So again, that should be on the recording. But he did read off his tally, for and against, as well as
Okay.
in support of. I think it was. He actually broke it down even further than just for and against.
Maybe I haven't gotten that far into the recording yet. I don't know.
Okay. So, Jeff, can you pull that up for us so we can just take a look at that? I don't know if you can maximize. I'm only seeing a portion of it. You want to make that larger, or is that on my side?
I can read it. Okay. Sorry, Tim.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's probably me.
On the entire screen on my side. I apologize if not.
The only thing I see, the last thing I see is clerical aid, then the next line is cut off.
Yeah, that's how mine is. I got this ribbon up top. I don't know how to get rid of it.
Everybody, this was sent to all of us, so we can just open it up on our own computers if we need
Right.
to.
Yeah. So what this is showing us, just again, and I'll run through it, and Jeff, as I go through it, please help me if I miss something. But what we wanted to do was give a look chronologically over the start of our 25-26 budget to where we are today. So the second row you see there, all the way on the left-hand side in column A, shows our superintendent's initial proposed budget to us on March 4th of 25. That budget included an increase from our 24-25 budget of $871,145, or an increase of 8.86%, for a total budget of that $10,705,676. Now, we all reviewed that. We all had a lot of questions and responses from our superintendent and the administration. That included, much costing contractual, as well as legal requirements for outplacement, contractual increases due to the negotiated contracts with our teachers and with all of our personnel. But again, that was our original 8.86, and I think everybody would identify that number. The Board of Education requested from the superintendent a list of proposed eliminations from the budget that would align with different levels of a budget increase that ranged from, if I remember correctly, a 4% increase, a 4.5% increase, a 5, and a 5.5. I think were the 4 we asked for. Our superintendent came back with those reductions, and on 3/11/25, we evaluated those, and we accepted the reductions that he had provided on the initial sheet, which was to get us to 5%, if I recall correctly. And then we also included the school counselor, which is the last line on there of the 71.5, to get us to the 4.99. So I think it was 5.5, and then we accepted that to get us down to the 4.99. These eliminations were intended to be, and are intended to be, the proposal from our superintendent and administration, which are least impactful to the students. So we adopted that budget on 3/18. That adopted budget reduced the overrun, or I'm sorry, the increase to our budget from the 871,145, and it reduced it down to $490,495. That came with a 4.99% increase and a $10,325,026 budget for adoption by the Board of Education and submission to the Board of Finance for their review. We submitted that budget. They did hold a meeting and had discussion on the budget. Jeff proposed it on Saturday morning. There was a follow-up meeting where we had discussion. There was no action taken by the Board of Finance on that adopted budget that we sent to them. On 4/3/25, the Board of Education came back to the table after the development and the discovery of the finalization of the bus contract, as well as the savings from the retirement of one of our executive assistants. The Board of Education at that meeting on 4/3 voted to reinstate as a offset to that. If you look up a little bit, Jeff, if you would scroll up, we highlighted in blue to reinstate White Memorial, Talented and Gifted, as well as the 5th and 6th grade band and the school counselor. Those, again, between the bus contract and the retirement, we had enough funds that we could reinstate those. We also, at that 4/3 meeting, there was a motion to use $66,000 of our non-lapsing account or our contingency. That non-lapsing account, as we've talked about before, is intended for non-recurring costs. So we used that $66,000 and we applied it to the volatile expenses associated with special education outplacement. That $66,000 created an additional surplus in our budget, maintaining the 4.99% that we had previously adopted and sent to the Board of Finance. And we used that money to reinstate the the instructional assistant and the clerical aide. So you can see that in this spreadsheet in the, let's call it a beige color. And again, removing those eliminations. That happened at our 4/3 meeting. On 4/8, this was brought to the Board of Finance for a vote. And at that 4/8 meeting, the Board of Finance decided to cut $66,000 from our budget. And this is where they also cut the $34,000 from the town budget to equal an even $100,000. That $66,000, the Board of Finance cannot tell us where to cut within our budget. But, you know, it was known already that, again, that $66,000 in the assessment that our superintendent, as well as our administration, had already proposed to us, that we would have to go back and eliminate or remove those two positions again in order to achieve the 4.31% that you see up there at a budget of $10,258,676. So that's where we are as of the referendum. That was the budget that was sent to referendum, as again adopted by the Board of Education, following the direction of the Board of Finance. After the meeting that took place on 5/13 last week, as I had just described, they reinstated $66,000 out of the town surplus to be able to fund our budget, putting us right back to where we were if you go all the way back to 4/3. All right, so we're back to where we were on 4/3, using $66,000 of our non-lapsing, applying it to the special education tuition, using the savings from the bus contract, and using the savings from the retirement of the executive assistant to reinstate or remove the eliminations for all of the, or not all, but the majority of feedback we received from the community and the input we received on what was, from the community's vantage point, necessary to be able to maintain, to the best of our ability, within the restrictions of finance, moving into the 25-26 year. Does that all make sense?
Tim, can I say something?
Absolutely.
Okay. Unfortunately, I don't know how this happened, but the townspeople seem to think, or the majority of the townspeople seem to think, that when the $66,000 was removed by the Board of Finance, they were saying that we needed to cut those two positions of the two aides, which the Board of Finance cannot tell us what to cut. They can only tell us how much money we need to cut. So, I mean, they said cut 66. They didn't say that we had to cut the two aides. The 66 could have come from any place else. And I think that's why That's what they're trying to say, is you need to cut 66, not that we want you to reinstate these two positions just because it equals that amount. You have to find $66,000 someplace.
That is it is a correct statement that the Board of Finance cannot tell us exactly which line items to cut within our budget. They can tell us to make a cut.
I mean,
Coincidence
we-
or by direction, that $66,000, as we'd already seen from our superintendent, was the proposal to be able to get us down to the 4.98%. Right. When we remove those, again, that was our superintendent as well as his administration's suggestion to us of being least impactful to the students and telling us that we have a very lean budget with very little room for any unforeseens. We've heard that over and over at our meetings. I was at the meeting when the 66 was cut. I believe if you look at the tape, it's not a coincidence, right? Where again, they knew where it was going to come from, even though they couldn't tell us where it was going to come from, right? But at the end of the day, when you look at our budget and you look at a $10 million budget, we've taken money out of emergency repairs. We've taken money out of, again, you look at this list. The Board of Education has looked at the budget very closely, and we've sent our superintendent back with the administration on a half dozen occasions, right, to tell us, in their professional opinion, as those who are operating our educational system, where we'd have to make that cut. And this has been the answer every single time. Are there any further questions on this sheet? I mean, again, is it clear, right? Because we want to use this to be able to communicate the message to the community. Does anybody have any suggestions on changes, or do you think that this lays out the?
I think it works. So we just need to make a motion to remove the budget from the town referendum.
Yeah, the first thing we'll need to do is we'll need to, I'll need a motion to rescind the Board of Education adopted budget of $10,258,676 at an increase of $424,145, or a 4.31% increase to the Board of Education budget.
Can we,
Make that.
I have a moved by Tom Buzzy, second by Tim.
Yep.
All right, any further discussion?
can we make this sheet that we're looking at right now available to the public?
Yes, that's the intention of it.
Okay. Yep.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, I can see everybody, so please signify by raising your hand. That is unanimous. Okay, so the second thing we need to do tonight is we need a motion to adopt a revised budget of $10,324,676, or a 4.98% increase at the value of $490,146.
I'll motion to adopt that budget.
A motion by Tim. We'll get a
I'll
second.
second it.
Either one. We'll get a second by Kristen. Any discussion?
I just have one question. What was the difference between, you said the 0.02% or something like that. Do we know an actual dollar amount?
$6,000. Yep. So there was a clerical mistake or error made in transferring our grant number from our Board of Ed budget that was accurately reflected into the town's overall spreadsheet or their budget.
And
that was picked up, and the inconsistency was brought up at the last Board of Finance meeting. That was corrected. That'll be the 0.02 difference between the previous referendum and this referendum, because what had taken place at the Board of Finance is no net increase to the town's, no additional net increase to the town taxes. And it was, again, taking money from a surplus or a contingency and applying it to the Board of Education to support the 66 and the community feedback that was received.
And did you say there was no mistake on our end? And
No, our numbers were accurately reflected. Yep.
okay.
Any further questions?
Tim, so you said I didn't get a chance to go to the Board of Finance meeting. The Board of Finance all of them voted down to this increase of the budget?
The Board of Finance voted down increasing the taxes.
Right. So
Yeah.
every board member on the Board of Finance voted down for increasing taxes in the town.
I believe that's accurate. Penny, you
Well-
might know more. I don't recall the actual vote. I don't know if it was unanimous.
The vote,
So,
wait a minute, the motion was made to add back in the $100,000, and it was, the nays took it and there was only one yes.
Okay. So that's the answer, Deirdre, you're looking for. So there was one who voted.
so one person voted yes to put 100,000 back into the budget, and the remainder of the Board of Finance voted no on increasing taxes to the residents of this town.
That is
Correct.
accurate.
And we're making decisions based on 50 letters from people, half of which said don't increase and half of which said, please keep this money in the budget for education. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, that's all. That's the only information that any board can use, right, is what's received.
So we have 6,000 people in town and we have 100 letters, some for, some against for tax
correct.
increase.
That's correct.
Okay.
And there was only 474 people that voted in the referendum this time.
That is correct, which again, if we have that conversation, that is actually a high output of voters for a referendum in the town of New Hartford, as stated by our first selectman.
Usually it's around 300.
Frank, I see your mouth moving. I think you might be on mute.
Are we allowed to, as a board, be involved in any kind of a get the vote out?
What do you mean, get the vote out?
I'll encourage
Just
people to
with
vote.
communications? No, I mean, we can communicate. Yeah, we can put communications out through the Friday folder, which again, I think would be something we could look at. We could get the vote out through the PTO. My understanding from what I'm hearing is they're active right now in the social media world. Again, there's a sign again, and that was a big topic of discussion at the Board of Finance meeting as well, with public comment, was how do we get more people out to vote? But that's not a challenge that we can solve as a Board of Education.
They also said at the Board of Finance meeting that it was suggested maybe sending out a postcard to remind people to vote in the referendum. And that costs at least $2,000 to send out a mailing to everyone in town. But we have the sign down at the town hall, in front of the town hall. You also have that sign up here by Antolini School, by the road that goes into Antolini School, announcing the referendum. It's up to people to read those signs. If they don't read that and they don't read social media, I don't know how else you're going to be able to tell people to get out to vote.
Have they set a date?
No,
Not
tomorrow night is the Board of Selectmen meeting, at which they will select the date for the next referendum. If the next referendum gets voted down and there is no budget passed, then you will go back to having your tax bills sent out with last year's tax increase.
Mhm.
And you'll have to play catch up in January when the second tax bill comes out.
That's correct.
Well, I appreciate that the Board of Finance did what they did and listened to people. I heard from a lot of people who probably didn't write letters that they voted against the budget because of the cuts on the education.
But in some of those letters that were received by the Board of Finance, people were under the impression that these two positions were teaching positions, which I don't believe that they are.
I don't think we can really speculate regarding the intentions of every person who wrote a letter. I think we can take the action that we can take right now. And if we're taken, we believe, generally speaking, I believe most people on this board believe that this was granted to us in order to help fund these positions in the schools. And if this, we can verify that by essentially passing this budget that will allow for us to keep those on staff, and then we go back to the town, and then if people voted down again, then we can figure out a way, or it's not really our full responsibility to figure out a way to get more input from everybody, because it's not just our budget that's at stake that people are voting for. I understand everybody's concerns about interpreting stuff. We do not have hard enough data. We just have the data that we have. So
All right, is there any further discussion? All right, seeing none, we'll again signify by raising hands. Again, this is to adopt the revised budget in the far right column, column G, at $10,324,676. A total increase to the Board of Education, $491,146, and a 4.98% increase to our budget. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed? And any abstentions? So I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 for, 2 against. So the motion passes 5-0. All right, that is our.
Oh, what is it? 5-0? You had two nays?
No, 5. Yeah, 5-2-0.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
That's our business for today. Can I get a motion to adjourn at 6:11?
so moved.
Moved by Kristen, second by Tom. All those in favor? Thank you all for joining. I appreciate your time on a special meeting on a Monday night. Enjoy the rest of your night.
We're going to go.